Nicodemus here. Today's episode, I wanted to ask about how to navigate all of the emotions that are coming up in America. Myself, projecting on America, but it's election season. And my God, I feel like I can't escape some of the thoughts and fears and things just coming up. So, what's a roadmap for us?
Yeah, it's we're in a very interesting and precarious time because I think of social media and the amount, our ability to communicate at such a very fast way with each other around the world. So information moves very quick and rapidly. If you take that part out, actually what's happening in the world right now has been happening for a long time, for thousands of years. You could look back, and whether it's the Pharaoh in Egypt or the Romans and the rule of the kings and the whole feudalistic society. And this world, if you understand that this world, like the Course in Miracles says, this is a world of illusions. So it's a place where people come and where the ego can play out and constantly use fear and division and separation, which is what you see happening right now. And it's very challenging because people get so caught up in what they're being told and the divisiveness and sides. How many families right now are maybe not talking to each other, have differences of opinion. And then with the part of the ego is always about having us be right about our perspective and the way that we have it and making others wrong. Now, there is an answer for this. And I think the first thing for us to understand is that this world is built on separation. So don't expect it to be different than that right now, currently. I mean, there's actually, in the midst of chaos, right, what's happening? I mean, there's all kinds of scandals, greed, crimes against children, the whole groups of people, division in politics. There's all kinds of, things happening and people really waking up to what's really going on the planet. And that can be very frightening for people. Well, let's talk about first, if we understand that the world isn't humanity's not isn't crashing. Actually, in the midst of all what appears to be chaos, there's still opportunities to see love and light and forgiveness. And it's ultimately up to us which world we choose to see. I want to read something actually I think is great. This comes from Emmett Fox, and he wrote this in September 5th, 1952. So you can imagine now that's, what is that, 72 years ago. Back then, they just came out of World War II, right? There was still all kinds of stuff happening, So think about the time periods, right? I know even like my grandparents lived through the Great Depression, World War I, the Great Depression, World War II, the Vietnam War. I mean, all this stuff was happening. So for them, this was the world is going to hell, or hell in a handbasket for them when it was happening. Actually, if you look back, there always seems to be this pull of the ego versus spirit, whether some people call it like evil versus good, this darkness versus light. I don't like to use the word versus because it implies that they're at war with each other. It actually is ultimately up to us which one we choose to see. Now, that doesn't mean we turn a blind eye, though. I think a lot of people think, like, I'm only going to see the good, so I want to close myself off to the truth of what's really happening. I like to propose for all of us that we're actually powerful enough to access forgiveness in the midst of what appears to be unspeakable and even horrific things that are happening to people, to children, to groups of people, genocides. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff happening. Can we be powerful enough in being the light, in forgiveness, that we can look on the truth and still see beyond the appearance of death and destruction and fear and separation? Do we have that ability? That's ultimately what we're being called to as teachers of God, as the light, as spirit. We're ultimately being called to this. So I want to read this. This is from 1952, Emmett Fox. And Emmett Fox used to do discourses and, a lot of almost new, maybe Christian thought back then, but I would say very similar to Course in Miracles. But I love this. He says, the captain is on the bridge. The world is not going to the dogs. The human race is not doomed. Civilization is not going to crash. The captain, God, is on the bridge. Humanity is going through a difficult time, but humanity has gone through difficult times, but humanity has gone through difficulties many times before in its long history and has always come through, strengthened and purified. Do not worry yourself about the universe collapsing. It's not going to collapse. And anyway, that question is none of your business. The captain is on the bridge. If the survival of humanity depended upon you or me, it would be a poor lookout for the great enterprise, would it not? And great enterprise, God's enterprise, is capitalized. The captain is on the bridge. God is still in business. All that you have to do is to realize the presence of God where trouble seems to be, to do your nearest duty to the very best of your ability, and to keep an even mind until the storm is over. That's really great instructions for all of us. Where can we offer forgiveness and compassion? Where can we offer maybe even a listening ear when we disagree with people? Where can we offer forgiveness in our thoughts? Even when we might not like what we see, even when we see people really acting out of deep darkness in their own mind, in their own heart, whether you call it the shadow self, or everybody has that part of that. And there's people that have rituals with that darkness within themselves, that have, they play around with the darkness. They seek pleasure from the darkness. The question for you and I is going to be, what is our response going to be when we see that in the world? Everything's either love or an opportunity, or an opportunity to offer love. And for us, we want to continually stay in that place within our own mind and our own heart in the midst of all the tragedies. And I put that in quotes because you don't know what the journey of a soul is. None of us do. We get to trust that God is at the helm. And then what can you do? It doesn't mean that, see, I think a lot of people collapse this with being complacent or resigned. It doesn't mean being resigned. There's many action steps we could take. There's many things we could do. We can lend a helping hand, a loving hand to our neighbors, people we don't know, and still hold boundaries and still say, hey, I stand for things that are ethical or that moral and that are what I believe are right-minded. I still can stand for those things. And the question is, can you stand in that and also still have a compassionate heart, a loving and forgiving mind for everything that you see? Because everybody here is fighting a hard fight within their own mind and heart where they believe that they're separated from God. It's all fear and all greed and all hurting of others stems from a lack of love. So the job for you and I is to supply that lack wherever we go and trust the rest to God. The captain is still on the bridge.